Hey everybody, I'm Bestor with Musician's Toolkit, and today we're going to talk about arranging. I'll explain later what arranging is because it's got lots of different definitions, but right now I just kind of want to tell you how I got into this business of arranging. It goes way back. When I was a little kid, like a lot of you, I had to sit down at the piano, and I hated to practice. In fact, I don't trust people that like to practice. So I'd sit down and I'd play Bach or Beethoven or something. To entertain myself, I would find myself doing this. I jazz it up a little bit. Well, my mom was smart enough to know that that wasn't a problem. That was arranging. I was taking something by Bach, something by Beethoven, whoever my piano teacher would assign me, and I would arrange it. I'd make it, do something my way. So I could take it and put it in a minor key, and I did that sometimes. I'm sure it didn't sound quite this good because I was younger, but my mom said, that's really cool. Play it the way Bach did it, and then play it the way Bestor wants to do it. And that really is how I started into arranging. I didn't know that's what it was. Well, later on, when I was in high school, I was a trumpet player, and I got hired for a television show. Some of you might remember, if not, your parents would know, the Donnie and Marie show. They were doing a television show and they had a live band that would play. One day their trumpet player got sick. They hired me to do it. And I went in and played trumpet. It was awesome. I made pretty good money. Got out of school. That wasn't bad. And one day the musical director said, "Hey, Bestor, nice trumpet. I heard you do a little writing of music. Can you arrange something?" I said, "Well, what do you mean arrange?" He said, "Well, we got this guy named Dick Van Dyke coming in. He's got a song. We need you to change it for him, to do it his way. We need you to arrange it." Well, that was my first arranging gig. I'll tell you, it scared me to death. I didn't know what I was doing. I stayed up all night writing about 60 seconds of music, and the next day handed out the parts, still written well, it wasn't quill and ink, it was pencil. But I handed it out to the band. They played it. I was hooked. I wanted to be an arranger. From then until now, I've done a lot of arranging. And today, I want to teach you how to do the very same thing. So like most of you, you get that question, what are you going to be if you grow up or when you grow up? And yeah, I always wanted to be a fireman and a policeman and all that. But later on, when I was in junior high school and the music thing, I just couldn't get it out of my brains. I thought, well, I want to do this music thing. And I like to arrange songs. I like to compose. So where do you go to learn that? Is there books you study? Do you go to school? And I thought it'd be good for you to know that, I'm a big fan of going to school. It's not that you need to go to university to learn how to write pop music, or if you're into rap or funk or whatever, something contemporary. But what you do learn when you go to a college or a university, you learn all the stuff. You learn music from the Renaissance, madrigal, all these things that you probably are going to put in your data bank, but later on, you're going to use those things when you're arranging music. We'll talk about that later, but to cut it short, I'm a big fan of filling that data bank. The place you get it at university and college. So I did. I went to school and I studied music arranging for the studio. Perfect for me. But that really got me where I went. However, I've also been educated on the streets. And that was really where I got most of my education was from the Donnie and Marie show. Write that song. I learned overnight how to do it. Then write this orchestra. The very first time I ever arranged for orchestra, I got an education. And even to this day, at the age of, I'm still educating myself. So you want to be an arranger. You wonder, what do I need? What kind of equipment do I need? When I started arranging music, I had a piano, I had a pencil and paper, sheet music paper. And I was able to do arranging back in the day, not that long ago. But now it takes a little bit more equipment. And I'd recommend that you don't go out and spend a fortune, but you do need some things. And so I want to talk about that. Now, why do you need that? You're saying, can I just use sheet music and pencil? You could do that. But what you're going to need for arranging, especially if you're going to make some money at it, oftentimes you need to do what we used to call Polaroids, or they call them mock-ups sometimes. And that is after you're done arranging, the person you're arranging the music for is going to want to hear it. And if you have a setup like we're going to talk about in a minute, you will be able to do that for them. It also makes a quick transition to commerce. You can write something, say you're arranging something for voice and piano, and you've got it written down in your equipment that we're going to talk about. That's easy to transpose, it's easy to put out, it's easy to sell that MP3 or that sheet music. So now let's talk about the equipment you'll need in order to arrange music. In the next video, I'll tell you exactly the options that you need, from the most expensive to the least expensive. In fact, there's some things you might already have and you don't even know. One of the things you'll need, one of the pieces of equipment you'll need to really get into arranging is what we call a DAW. Now that's an acronym, D-A-W. It stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Do not be afraid. You'll learn it. In fact, there's some pretty easy ones. But let me talk about some of the professional ones that guys in the business use. Some of you might already be at that point where you want to step up to the next level. The one that's used probably industry-wide is Pro Tools. Pro Tools started out more as a recording instrument, but it also now has MIDI and it has the ability to do what typical DAWs do. It's the one that I recommend if you really do a lot of recording. You're a guitar player, you're a piano player, you're a singer, you want to record a lot of stuff as well as write. That's the one that I record. And the nice thing about it, a pro for that one, is that almost every studio in the world uses it. So you can walk in with your session and say, here it is, and it opens up in the studio. So it's great for that. The cons, it's expensive, it's a little buggy in Windows, and it needs an iLock or a little dongle thing, which is the bane of my existence. And if you're like me and you hate those things, it's the authorization. But really, Pro Tools is one of the best. I use Digital Performer. I've used it since even before it was digital back in the 80s. So I use it because I also do a lot of film composing. If you're a film composer or someone that needs to tie your music to video and you need to have a variable click, we're kind of getting in the weeds a bit here, but if you need that sort of thing, Digital Performer is a good program. And they also have a lot of sounds that you can input in that are very good for your arranging. The cons, it's a kind of a power hog. It uses a lot of computer processing, and there's a few things that are a little glitchy about it, but it's a decent program. Cubase, I don't know that much about it, but a lot of my friends use it. It's been around forever, has very few glitches. The cons on it, it's kind of complex. It has a workflow that I've been told is kind of complex, a steep learning curve. But it's been around forever. A lot of guys swear by it. Lastly, the one that I'm going to recommend of these professional DAWs is Logic Pro. Logic Pro is owned by Apple. So for those of you Apple users, it's kind of like, you'll get it. You know, it has that Apple feel to it. It's got tons of virtual instruments that come with it. So when you buy it, it comes with an orchestra already. It comes with some guitars and pianos. So right out of the box, it's very useful. The con about it, it's only for Mac. So sorry, you PC guys. But anyway, that's 4 of the best DAWs that I recommend. There are more, but those are the top ones I recommend. Well, we don't have to use those expensive programs. We're going to use GarageBand. In fact, it comes with a Macintosh when you buy one, so you might already have one. We're just going to open that up, and for today's lessons on arranging, that's all you need. You got a piano and a few other instruments, and it's right here on your Macintosh. So you might be asking yourself, why do I need a DAW? Well, when you're arranging, you need it for a couple of things, and this is the way I use it. Number one, oftentimes the client I'm working for needs to hear what I'm doing. They may not read music, so if I hand them a piece of sheet music, it's like, I don't read music, but they can hear what you're doing if you record it. That's one of the purposes of the DAW. The other reason I use a DAW, it allows me to access sounds. For example, I've been playing the piano, but even in GarageBand, they've got a whole list of different sounds you can do. So here's the grand piano, but say I'm writing something for strings, I just grab a string part. Suddenly my inspiration changes totally. I could play that on a piano, but it sounds different, and I'd probably write different. So I always like to write inside the sound that I'm working with. Even guitar, it doesn't sound like a great guitar, but it's enough that I get my brain into it. And there's a whole myriad of sounds you can use. And that's probably the main reason I use a DAW when arranging. So you have your DAW, you have your digital audio workstation. The next piece of equipment you're going to need, very important, is a keyboard. Here's the problem. When people think of keyboards, they think of keyboards. And you do need one of those. But you also need a keyboard, a piano keyboard. It's going to be your controller. It's what's going to enter things into the computer, and we'll talk a lot about that today. What kind of keyboard to get? There's 3 different kinds. You have a synth keyboard, which is got the synthesizer touch. It's a light kind of touch. Then you have a semi-weighted touch, which is what I have here. And then you have a weighted touch, which is like a piano. If you really live in just a piano world, you might want to get a weighted piano. I use a semi-weighted because I can still play piano, but I can also play strings and drums and other things. And then you may want to get one of these. It's not really expensive, but it's 32 keys. I take it on airplanes, I take it in hotel rooms, and if you're doing a lot of sequencing and different things, this is very helpful. So I have one of these, and I keep it with me. So 3 types of keyboards: semi-weighted, weighted, and synth keys. You can also get 88 keys, which I highly recommend, or you can get a 61 key, 49 keys, 32 keys, or 25 keys. Don't get the 25 keys. You will curse the day you bought it. It's just too small. You have to keep changing octaves. So anyway, get a keyboard. That's the next piece of equipment you need. When you're making your decision, you're at the music store or you're shopping online for a keyboard, you don't have to buy the most expensive keyboard. I mean, yeah, it's nice if you got the money and it's no big deal. But you don't need to have sounds. You can buy a keyboard that's got sounds in it. But for our purposes, if you've got a laptop or a computer and you got GarageBand or any of the big expensive DAWs we talked about, you already got tons of sounds. You just need your keyboard to be a controller. And that's nice because that means you're not going to spend a lot of money. So whether you get the 88 keys, the 25, don't get the 25 keys, or the 32 keys, you don't need to get sounds on it. You just need to have one that is USB. It's a USB. Sometimes it's powered by your computer, which is really nice. And it'll come with the cord, so don't panic. That's all you need. Don't spend a lot of money on your keyboard. Well, there's another piece of equipment you're going to need. This is where things get a little nerdy, so hang in there. Don't panic, though. You're going to need an interface. This is the thing that allows your computer to talk to your keyboard, to talk to your speakers or headphones. So you're going to get one of these. I show you this one. I've actually got an even cheaper one that we're using today, but I didn't want to pull it apart to show you. So basically, this allows you to plug in things, 1/4-inch cords like your computer, your guitar, or your vocal mic. It has headphone out, so you can plug headphones into it when you're recording, or you just want to listen. So you really don't even need speakers if you just want to use headphones. On the back, it allows you to plug in MIDI and also USB. The MIDI's kind of going out, but it's still useful once in a while. And it's got a few other plugs too if you've got friends and you're recording together. But the bottom line is you don't need to get a real expensive one of these if you're just starting out. And frankly, I've been arranging for decades and I still use a cheap one. I spend my money in other places. The last piece of equipment or software that you're going to need is engraving software. It's kind of one of the most important things in my arsenal of stuff. And the reason is, unlike when I started, when I had a pen and paper, now you've got to get this down somehow so that people can read it. And there really are 2 primary softwares that you use for music engraving. I use Finale. That's the name of it, Finale, Finale, and I've used it since the late 80s, so I've used it since its beginning, and it's for me it works great. Now I've been told by people who try to learn it that it's got a steep learning curve, and but I'm used to it, so that's what I use. There's another software that a lot of people like to use as well. It's called Sibelius, and Sibelius I understand works really kind of intuitively. They're both great software. They're kind of competitors, so they keep raising the bar. Either one of those. It's going to hurt a little bit when you start to learn it, but it's definitely worth the journey. So we're going to use Finale since that's what's on my system. And I want to show you how I use it. I find it works great on 2 screens. On one screen, you have your DAW, which I showed you before. I'm using GarageBand today. It's easy. And on the other screen, I'm going to pull my engraving software over there. So now on this screen, I've got engraving software. On this screen here, I'm using my DAW. And the computer and the keyboard talks to both at the same time. Later on, as we talk about arranging and we see the process unfold, you'll see just how wonderful it makes the whole process. You know, I've used the term arranging so long, sometimes I forget that a lot of people don't even know what it is. You may ask yourself, what actually is arranging? Well, arranging is, it is composing. It's maybe it's like composing with a head start. In a way, it's kind of rearranging. You're taking some existing music that somebody else wrote and you're putting your own flavor on it. And there's different ways to do that, and that's what we're going to learn now. The first way that you can change something is taking the orchestration of the original and putting in a whole different orchestration. For example, if something was written for piano, you could simply rearrange that for guitar and have a whole different sound and a whole different vibe to it. Or you could say, well, I want to take something that was done for like a chamber solo, maybe a piece by Bach, and I want to put it to solo piano. That's another way of rearranging it. I had an opportunity to do an album for a violinist, and the idea was we would take classic rock songs, which are written for guitar and bass and traditional guitar songs. And in this case, it's the Beatles, and I would do it for an orchestra. So here's a song I did, taking the music of the Beatles and exploding it into a full orchestration. This kind of arrangement is a real drastic one, as you'll hear. But thanks to the Beatles melody and the Beatles harmony, you still know the song, but it's been rearranged for solo violin. You can follow along here on the violin part. Here is some of Liverpool's Suite. This particular section is Help. So that is arranging based on instrumentation. It's one way to think about a song when you're arranging it. Another method of arranging is to switch genres from the original to your new version. This next one is a pretty extreme example. We're taking Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine, which starts with a really great guitar lick, and we are going to give it to a violinist. And this song, instead of featuring drums, bass, and guitar, features violins, violas, cellos, and basses. This is my version of Sweet Child of Mine to teach you that changing genres is one way to make a nice arranging difference. Trick on a song like this is to try to still keep the melody that people know and the harmonies, but it's the orchestration that's different and fresh. It was a lot of fun to do. So trying new genres is a way to get something fresh in a new arrangement. Another way to think of some of your arranging is to say, maybe I can put in some world music. You know, we have access now to instruments from around the world and voices from around the world. And so that's a new way that you can arrange music. Here's an example of that. This is a song called Carol of the Bells that I did for Jenny Oakes Baker. And you're going to hear Ukrainian voices. You're going to hear American kind of jazz background. And of course, Jenny playing a legit violin. Mix that all together and you get something really fresh. So this is a good example of that. Follow along the rhythm section here. Having those voices in there really colors it in a nice way. These are some of the things you can do when you arrange a piece to make it yours. Anyway, there's taking a classical piece, putting it on its world head. One of the ways I like to arrange music is to take something classical and just jazz it up a little bit. In this case, I didn't have to go too far because Fauré, a famous French composer who had written this famous melody, which you'll recognize when you hear it, it's called Pavane. He already kind of started with a little jazz vibe. I just added a little bit more. Here's my version of Fauré's Pavane, which demonstrates the classical to jazz way of doing an arrangement. It still sounds like the old song, the original song, but it had a freshness to it. And that really is what arranging is, giving it your own flavor, something fresh, something new. Probably the device that I use most when I'm doing arranging is to take an existing song, but adding new harmonies. And when I say new harmonies, I'm talking about things like this. So let's take a song, a very simple song. Okay, I've never been asked to arrange this, but, well, actually I have, come to think about it. But Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, all right? We all know how it goes. That's the original. And so forth. But I can take that and by putting in some surprise chords. So I start with the normal chords. And when I got to that, you probably went, ooh. Some of you might have gone, ooh, but it's a surprise chord. It surprises you because you weren't expecting that. Anyway, you just experiment, and that's really something fresh, something new. I'm kind of known for that, putting in those surprise chords, especially at the end when you go twinkle, twinkle, little. That last little thing kind of surprised you a little bit. That's a way to make your arrangements sound fresh by using surprise chords. Another way to do it, and this is kind of one of the first things I do, is I'll take a song, our Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but instead of doing major, we could try it minor. See what that does. Well, that's kind of cool, kind of ironic. Ooh, a surprise chord too. So by going to a minor key, oftentimes that will take you to a new place that you weren't expecting and give you something fresh. The last one that we'll talk about is jazzing things up a little bit. You know, Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, primarily using normal major minor chords. By putting in some jazz harmonies, it just gives us something fresh. And so that's something I always try to do. And putting in chords that aren't expected. Actually, that was a wrong chord. That was too surprising. It's a lot of fun to arrange, but those are some of the devices that I use to freshen up an arrangement. So there's another arranging method that's been done. It's really been popular the last 7, 8 years, something like that, especially since the advent of YouTube. And that is using mashups. In short, that's taking one song and another song, oftentimes very differently sounding, kind of smashing them together and seeing what happens. I had a lot of fun with this one. This is my version of Kashmir by Led Zeppelin mixed with Presto from the Four Seasons by Vivaldi. These guys didn't know each other, but they do in this song. So check it out. I'll start in the middle and see if you can pick up how this works. All right, check it out. This is where we put the two together. Now Vivaldi gets his turn, see? Doing an arrangement like this is a bit like a Rubik's Cube. Trying to figure out how to take this harmony, this groove, going back 200 years and putting it with this harmony and this groove. When it works, it's a lot of fun. When it doesn't work, it's a little scary, but you be the judge. So you've got an arranging gig, and you're going to do something for a client. Which is how I spend most of my time. This next section, we're going to talk about project preparation, how to work with a client. And I can't stress how important this is if you want to get paid and you want to get more gigs. So usually the whole process starts with somebody calling you up saying, hey, I want you to do an arrangement. You say to them, let's get together and talk. And, you know, it's usually best face-to-face, because there's a lot of room to fall through and when you do emails and text and so forth. So I like to meet face-to-face or Skype or FaceTime. But you sit down with them and you listen. You listen a lot to what they say, because you are going to have to digest what they say and put it into music. The trick is what they are really and what they think they are often different things. So a person might say, you know, I kind of fancy myself an R&B singer. And if you heard that and you wrote them an R&B song, and then when you hear them, they sound like a classical singer, you should have listened a bit more. And I always say that what people think they are and what they are often two different things. So make sure that you really get to know what type of singer or what type of instrumentalist they are. So that takes a lot of listening. They might say they're this and say, well, tell me what are some of your favorite songs? And then they start saying, well, I like this and this. And they go, oh, he was really talking classical. That's where you've got to really determine what they want. So listen between the words. Be careful of words like contemporary. I want something contemporary. I want something current, something unique. And then when you hear what they want, they don't really want something that way. They just think they want something that way. That happened to me many times. You got to learn to speak the same language as a client. I had a story once. This is for a film score, but the gentleman said, I really want you to do an orchestral thing, and I really love clarinet. Man, I just love clarinet, so be sure to put some clarinet in there. So I thought, okay, well, I can do that. So I wrote this beautiful string melody and all that, and then I colored it with this beautiful clarinet line. We get into the studio, the orchestra's playing, all of a sudden he goes, wait, stop, what's that? I said, what's what? What's that sound? What's playing that melody there? I said, well, that's clarinet. Oh, I don't want that. See? So make sure that you know what your client really wants. Well, another way to find out what type of client you're working with is to find out what's on their iPod, or maybe we should be a little more current. What's on their YouTube, what's on their Spotify, their Apple Music. By looking at the kind of things they like and the kind of music, when they say R&B, you say, play me a song that's R&B for you off your iPod. And they play something, you go, oh, he really doesn't want R&B, he wants something a little more pop. They think they speak your language, but you know more of what they want. So I always try to over-communicate. I try to have them repeat or give me examples of what they want. Because if you're going to do this arrangement, you don't want to mess up. You might only get one shot with this client, and you want to make sure that it's right. Lastly, I've invented a term working with clients. I call it musicchiatry. I won't tell you who the client is, but I have a couple clients that I have to practice musicchiatry with. You have to know exactly how to treat them. You have to make sure that their decision is the right decision, even if it's not. So I have a way of making people think that they've made the decision when in essence I kind of made them think that. It's hard to teach this, but it just takes a lot of years of experience. But I guess it's like being in business. The client's always right, even when they're not. The last thing to determine when you're working with a client is to find out, if they're a singer, what type of range they have. Don't ask them this, because they'll probably say something like, I have a 5-octave range. Nobody has a 5-octave range, not even, no, I can't even think of the name right now, but there's nobody out there that has a 5-octave range. And if they do, part of it's a burp and the other part's a squeak, and you don't want to use those anyway. So find out their range. Don't ask them where their break is if you're a vocalist, because they'll lie and they'll say, well, I really break about here. Listen to them sing, and you determine exactly what their range is. If they're a musician, an instrumentalist, don't ask them to say, well, I'm advanced or I'm intermediate. Listen to them play, and you determine what they are. Most people have a bit of an ego, and they'll probably say they're a little better than they are. But you're going to do the arrangement, and you're going to make them look good. And they won't look good if you've written something too hard for them. And they'll probably blame you for writing outside their range. Anyway, getting to know the client is absolutely crucial when you're doing a project for somebody else. It's more important than writing music, in my estimation. In our last segment, we talked about working with a client. And oftentimes you will be writing and arranging music for someone else. But if you're lucky enough to be able to just do your own thing, say you're doing an album or you're releasing a video or something, and you're doing your arrangement for your own self, how do you determine, what kind of style to do? This has a little bit to do with marketing, but I think it's important to know. I see a lot of people put on, they're chasing somebody else. They're listening to, I want to do an arrangement just like those guys. And you're always chasing somebody else's style. I find that if you have a fan base, you have people that follow you, maybe it's just your family or your people in your neighborhood, but do a little survey. Find out, what is it that you like about what I do? If I were to do a song and do an arrangement, what would you like? Ask them. So oftentimes you've got an inner circle. You've got a wife, a girlfriend, roommates. Maybe it's just people in your band class or wherever, your music class. Ask them what they think about you. What do you like that I do the best? What do you like about my music? That'll help steer you towards a style. I have a lot of arranging friends, and I talk to them, and I say, because it's hard to be objective, but I ask them, what do you think I do best? What would you like to hear me do? And that tends to steer me. But my last advice in this area is be authentic. It's you see something on YouTube, you think, oh, I want to do something like that, and maybe I'll get 1 million followers as well. Well, you're already behind the curve. Somebody already did it. And there are very few people that are successful just following somebody else. So of all the songs that I've ever done, the ones that have been the most successful are when I've been authentic. And so for that, you just need to follow your gut instinct. That's what I call it. Just follow in your heart. Do something that you're really passionate about. Take a direction of something you really want to do. Don't just follow YouTube. Just say, I want to do this. I want to do this style. I want to arrange in this particular genre. And do it because you want to do it. Chances are that'll make you the most successful. All right, guys, now is the fun part. We get a chance to do something together. We're going to do an arrangement. This is a recent project that I just got. In fact, it's a week ago I got this assignment, and I thought it would be fun for us to do it together. Even though I've done it already, I want to take you through the process, exactly how it happened with me, doing an arrangement of The Rose. For those of you that aren't my age, this was a song that was popular back in the 70s and 80s by Bette Midler. Came out of a movie. Anyway, it's a beautiful song. So what's the first thing we do? We meet with the client. All right, imagine you're sitting here in a room, as I was, with this producer from Broadway and this Tony Award-winning singer from Broadway. A lot of egos in the room, doing my musicology. The producer says, I love this song. I really want to do this song. I look over at the artist. She's rolling her eyes. Obviously, she doesn't like the song. I'm in the middle, being Switzerland here, saying, I see why you like that song, Mr. Producer. It is a lovely song. I turn to the artist and I say, you're right about this song. It's a beautiful song, producer, but artist, I know it's a little boring to some degree because it's kind of the same old thing. For example, the song goes like this. Kind of repeats da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee. Repeat 3 times. So yeah, as an artist, I can see why she didn't like that. So I said, this is the brilliance of being an arranger. I said, you're going to get your song, and I'm going to make this song be so unique and fresh that it'll be your own version, and it'll really show you off. See what I did there? That's called musicology. All right, so now we're going to think about how to arrange this song. I have at my disposal for this particular gig a full orchestra. But I like to say just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you have a 90-piece orchestra in front of you doesn't mean you should use every instrument. And that's a real temptation when you're first starting out. You go, oh man, I got a sousaphone and I've got all the drums and I've got everything. And you forget that the song's called The Rose and it's this sweet little thing, but you're going to put everything in the kitchen sink because this is your big chance. So remember that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Sometimes less is a lot more. So let's now go to the next section where we'll learn exactly the process of how we're going to arrange this song. So now the artist and the producer have gone away. They've left you in your sanctuary to come up with something brilliant that's going to make them both happy. The first thing you do when you're doing an arrangement of a song, and I highly recommend this, and I'll tell you why, is to write the song down. Jot it down or get the sheet music. Make sure that you've got the song as it was originally done. And the reason I say that is twofold. First of all, you're going to study the song, and we'll do that in a second. But the other reason is because, like me, if you don't write it down, you might turn in a lovely arrangement, like I did once, and the client will say, wow, that's beautiful, but where's the bridge of the song? Like happened to me. I did this wonderful arrangement, and I had done it all nice, and then, because I wasn't just going by memory, I forgot there was a bridge to the tune, and so I had to kind of redo it. So now I make sure that I actually jot it down. And you can go online and download the sheet music. You might have to pay for it. In fact, you probably should pay for it, but sometimes you can find public domain versions of the tune. But it's worth that extra $4 or $5 to download the song and have it in front of you on the computer. I've gone ahead and done that here. If you look over here at this screen, you'll see that I've put down the melody line, and then I've also jotted down the chords on top. And these are the original chords of the song. So it allows me to hear the tune and to see the lyrics and to kind of analyze the song. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to analyze the original song so that we can see exactly what we're looking at. So now you have the music in front of you, either the sheet music you purchased or like I did, I lifted it and off the album and put it down. So you're looking at it here in front of you, and you analyze it. Typically, this is what I do. I start with the melody, and in this case, it's so that song, that is the melody. And you listen to it, you kind of roll it around in your head a little bit. You don't do anything yet, but you got to really be familiar with how that melody goes. And sometimes I ask myself, can I change that melody? Some say love instead of some say love. Some say love. Now, this is one of those melodies where you have to almost stay with it because the melody is so recognizable. The next thing I do is I look at the harmony. I analyze the original harmony. In this case, it's very, very simple. C, da, 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 G, F, G, C, da, da, dee, da, da, dee, da, 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 dum, da, 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 dum, da, da, dee, da, 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 la, da, da, dee, da, 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 dum, sa, dee, dee, da, 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 da. Okay, again, very simple. Think about that a little bit. I go, well, I can't really change the melody, but I might be able to change the harmony. We'll get to that a little later. Next thing, I think about the rhythm. Well, this isn't a tune that really has a lot of rhythm, although every song does. But this one has something very, very distinctive. It's a little hook. It's a term we use in music to talk about that thing that kind of catches you. Oftentimes it's the melody, but in this case, it's a little device. It's a little rhythmic device that when you play it, 9 times out of 10, people that were alive in the 70s and 80s will say, oh, that sounds like the Rose. So, see? Some say love, it's like a river. I'm not going to sing for you, but this is how that song goes. That's such an important thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't keep some of that in my arrangement, because people, they just won't accept the song without that. All right. The next thing we study is the lyrics of the song. And what we're looking for is, we're looking for the emotion. Some say love is like a river. Some say love is like a razor. There's little things in this that when I go through it, I'm thinking, if it's like a river, maybe I want to arrange it with kind of a river feel. Maybe I want to, if I say love is like a razor, ooh, that's a little edgy. Maybe I want to put a little edge in there. And the last part, so you analyze the lyrics and see what kind of story the lyrics are telling you. And you'll see how I responded later when we actually go through the arrangement. And the last thing is you analyze, apart from, I won't say apart, connecting all of this together, what are the emotions of the song? I'm not going to take a song like this and go, some say love, it is, because that would be totally ridiculous and totally against what the lyrics are saying. So you got to be in tune with that. Melody, harmony, rhythm, lyrics, emotion of the song. Understand that from the original before you start your version.